headlines, sorting through the media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. With you, as always, I am your host, Tim Tapp, coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. Tonight, we're going to talk about a few things that just aren't getting talked about because the news cycle is completely and totally dominated by the Syria storyline, and probably rightfully so. But keep in mind, this is a perfect opportunity for everyone to be distracted by the things that are going on other than Syria. In fact, I've heard it said by a few folks that this may actually just be a wag the dog kind of situation where they're doing this intentionally to keep you distracted. Regardless if that's the case or not, the use of chemical weapons is by no means a matter to be taken lightly. The question there is, was it actually Assad who did it or the rebels? Because there's credible reports that say both. Regardless of that, we're going to focus on some other things today. First of all, though, I would also like to go ahead and invite everyone out there listening today to check out our Blog Talk Tap Into the Truth this coming Sunday, where we'll have 3 separate guests on, starting with Dr. Sharon Schutz, Lady Patriots website co-founder, and, well, she's quickly become a friend of mine. She'll be joining us at the top of the hour, and we'll be discussing the Syrian situation, any of the new developments that take place between now and then, along with just the general situation as a whole. Then, a little bit later, we'll be joined by another quickly becoming a friend of mine, that being Randy Anderson. She is the person that has set up the Facebook events designed to create a new level of awareness for child abuse. This event is called Leave Your Porch Light On for Landon Wells. It's an event that's designed to coincide with a candlelight vigil taking place in Harriman, Tennessee, at Riverfront Park. This vigil is taking place for Landon Wells, a 5-year-old who was an unfortunate victim of child abuse that was a result of drug abuse by the mother and her live-in boyfriend. While a lot of the details are, of course, coming out, this is a local story that is picking up momentum and getting some national attention, and I think it's going to continue to do so. This Facebook event is, of course, a nationwide event, and there has been a tremendous amount of response so far. And I'm happy to say that Randy Anderson will be on to discuss this event, the things that led her to organize the event, and where things will go from there. And then in the second hour, we'll be joined by the owner-operator of Frontier Firearms and political activist Brant Williams. His activities politically are always interesting to follow because he is very opinionated and he is not shy about sharing those opinions. He is a conservative, and he is almost always worth the listen. He's very well spoken, but he is also very aggressive at times with making his point. Also, like to go ahead and remind everyone that if you are following this show, you can follow it here. In fact, while we're on the point of following, if you guys wouldn't mind going ahead and hitting the follow button, I would appreciate it. The more followers, the better. But we are also available on iTunes, as is the Blog Talk version of the show. And the Blog Talk version of the show is also being carried now by Stitcher.com and by tunedin.com, both of which are great places where you can either download the apps for your wireless devices or go via your computer and listen to a wide variety of things. So if you enjoy the show, you've got the opportunity to hear it there as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start with the simple fact that with the 9/11 anniversary coming ever so quickly, recently there was a op-ed written by Tom Engelhardt, who happens to be a fellow at the National Institute, and, well, actually, it's technically the Nation Institute, sorry, and he happens to be a professor at the Graduate School of Journalism at the University of California at Berkeley. The op-ed, however, was written for Al-Jazeera English, which is an extension of the new Al Jazeera America television network. This particular op-ed that he wrote, in a nutshell, just says that America should forget about 9/11. In fact, I'm going to quote a little bit from it. He says, "Let's bag it." I'm talking about the 10th anniversary ceremonies for 9/11 and everything that goes with them. The solemn reading of the names of the dead, the tolling of bells, the honoring of first responders, the gathering of presidents, the dedication of the new memorial, the moments of silence, the works. The guy wants us to just forget. Now, he even goes so far as to call for the whole area to be shut down, dismantled, torn down. At one point in the op-ed, he asks, quote, "Ask yourself this, 10 years into the post-9/11 era, haven't we had enough of ourselves?" I guess we should take some comfort in the fact that he at least acknowledges the attack took place, and even describes them as abusive, horrific acts. Although abusive doesn't exactly begin to cover what took place on September 11th, 2001. It was an act of war. But, he wasn't done then. He also went on to say, quote, "The facts of 9/11 are, in this sense, simple enough. It was not a nuclear attack. It was not apocalyptic. The cloud of smoke where the tower stood was no mushroom cloud. It was not potentially civilization ending. It did not endanger the existence of our country or even of New York City. Spectacular as it looked and staggeringly as the casualty figures were, the operation was hardly more technologically advanced than the failed attack on the single tower of the World Trade Center in 1993 by Islamists using a rented Ryder truck packed with explosives." Now, I'm going to withhold saying too much right there, but I'll come back to it. Something you really need to know, though, is he finishes up this op-ed by saying, quote, "Memory is usually so important. But in this case, we would have been better off with oblivion. It's time to truly inter not the dead, but the worst urges in American life since 9/11 and the ceremonies which, for a decade, have gone on with them. Better to bury all of that at sea with bin Laden, and then mourn the dead, each in our own way, in silence, and, above all, in peace. Okay, first of all, the guy doesn't seem to know that this is 2013, not 2011. So we're actually coming up on the 12th anniversary, not the 10th anniversary. Good to know that he did his fair share of reasonable research before writing his op-ed. But the guy seriously said that we need to forget about it because it wasn't a nuclear attack, because it didn't endanger the country. It didn't even endanger New York City's existence. This man is off his rocker, and I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that Al-Jazeera was more than happy to have this op-ed show up in their material, since in essence they are a Islamic media source. Of course they would love for America to forget all about 9/11. I mean, after all, it's not like it was anything serious, was it? It wasn't technologically advanced. It certainly didn't do any real damage. Oh, sure, there were thousands of people killed, American and British citizens, along with a smattering of a few other foreign nationals who happened to be trying to conduct business. You know, a little thing like innocent people who had nothing to do with the perceived wrongs being perpetrated upon the group of people who decided it was appropriate to smash airplanes into a building. No, we should just forget all about that. But memory's normally so important. You know why memory is important? Because, number one, it's through our experiences that we become who we are and hopefully who we were meant to be. But beyond that, it is also how we keep from repeating the mistakes that we have already made. If we were to forget 9/11, we might as well just forget the founding. We might as well just forget common sense, which unfortunately it seems like has been done in a lot of cases. But we also should just go ahead and forget a sense of self-preservation. This guy's more than liberal. This guy is the reason why some people have been quoted as saying that liberalism is a mental disorder. In this guy's particular case, and did you hear the part where I introduced him that he's a college professor? This guy is, to me, absolutely unbelievable that anyone would make those statements. He literally says we should forget about it because it's not any different than trying to blow up a truck. I, for one, don't personally think that we ought to forget when somebody tries to blow up a truck and kill innocent people. But anyway, this guy's still going about his business, and nobody even seems to care that much that Al-Jazeera America is broadcasting full strength here. The propaganda arm of Islam is reached ever deeper into America. The call to prayers can be heard 5 times a day in New York City now, for blocks on end. The fine folks of New York not only have been under attack and now have been invaded, they are very nearly defeated. They are occupied now. Anyway, just thought some of you might be interested in knowing that in fact was going on. Also, something else that I'm sure a lot of folks kind of have heard about, but there's still not a lot of talk going on about it. Last Friday, going into the weekend, before the press announcement that the occupier decided that he would go to Congress after all to get permission before dropping bombs on Mr. Assad, seems to think that he can pinpoint exactly where Assad is, and he'd be the only one who gets killed during the attacks. Although, it's not about regime change, is it? Anyway, with national and just about every local news organization absolutely breathlessly covering the Obama slow march to war, he still managed to find time Tuesday to perform what he believes is his primary duty. Not disarming Bashar Assad or his forces, or the Al-Qaeda rebels killing and maiming innocent Syrians, but, of course, disarming law-abiding American citizens and U.S. businesses who happen to sell firearms. Because according to a number of firearms legal experts and police advisors, the White House's newest move that was supposedly a surprise to the so-called gun lobby, he managed to sign 2 new executive actions. These aren't even orders, these are actions. These particular happen to include a measure that targets the import, or actually the re-import, important distinction, of military surplus weapons, which is the raison d'etre of many gun collectors in America. Former police firearms instructor Jeff Kingridge told Law Enforcement Examiner, a website that is one of the few that's covering this story and still trying to have a voice and shout out loud enough that you can hear this over the yells of Syria, Syria. Without evidence of one case in which a legitimate military gun collector's firearms purchased from a military surplus store were used in a homicide, or current president, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, has taken it upon himself to pass laws that are constitutionally questionable without input from Congress. Now, it's very diplomatic phrasing. It's not constitutionally questionable. It is simply unconstitutional. Period. End of that discussion. Of course, everybody knows that Uncle Joe was chosen to make the announcement about the new rules, which, of course, the occupier added to the list of actions the White House already determined the president may take without congressional approval. Obama's new gun control measures by fiat are the president's reaction to Congress declining to pass any gun control legislation in the aftermath of the Newtown, Connecticut school massacre. Everybody knows that Newtown was a horrible event. There are still several folks that cling to the fact that, cling to the statement and the belief that it was a false flag operation, and that some people even go so far as to claim that it didn't actually happen. Now, they have some compelling, interesting evidence, but I'm not quite ready to buy into that particular conspiracy theory. But either way, I'm not sure which would be worse. At any rate, National Rifle Association spokesperson Andrew Arlendan Sorry, dude, I can't quite get that last name. Sometime you can contact me if you want me to correct it. Anyway, he was quoted as saying that this administration should get serious about prosecuting violent criminals who misuse guns and stop focusing its efforts on law-abiding gun owners. He also went on to say, quote, requiring background checks for corporations and trusts does not keep firearms out of the hands of criminals. Prohibiting the re-importation of firearms into the U.S. that were manufactured 50 or more years ago does not keep firearms out of the hands of criminals. This administration should get serious about prosecuting violent criminals who misuse guns and stop focusing its efforts on law-abiding gun owners. Well, evidently he felt so strongly about that he mentioned it twice. But, here's the thing. I was taking a look at some of the weapons that are specifically mentioned on this list, and there's 3 that keep popping out to me. And let me drag that up here on my stack of stuff, because I had it here just a little while ago. And I, of course, cannot find it now. So give me just a second, if you don't mind, while I do a little multitasking and try and pull that up. But ultimately, we still keep coming back to the very simple fact that the president, not this guy is actually the elected office holder, he is the occupier. But unfortunately, there are way too many people on both sides of the aisle and in the media and even among conservative talk shows that just accept this guy, since he's currently occupying the White House, that he is the president. Even if he was the president, he does not have the legal authority to determine things on his own. These actions do require the force of congressional action, legislation. However, legislation that requires any type of abridgment to the right to own and bear arms of American citizens is unconstitutional. Of course, by all rights, unfortunately, we have Obamacare, which is the individual mandate, at least, unquestionably is unconstitutional. Even if you consider it a tax, which that's a stretch, although that was the argument that they made, it's a bit ridiculous. Because what actually happens here? The president gets the legislation that he wants, and suddenly no law-abiding citizen is allowed to have firearms anymore. How is that allowed to happen? But the Constitution is clear, and no matter how much the argument is made against it, the bottom line is, when the founders wrote the Bill of Rights, they understood the militia to be all adult males within a reasonable age that could utilize firearms to be the militia. There wasn't a standing army at that time. They didn't want to have a standing army at that time because they thought that would be a threat to the sovereignty. Could be too easily used by an abusive leader to take control. So they were concerned about that. After that, they had other concerns. But the bottom line was, there was no police force either. A modern police force didn't come along until much later. So they defined the militia, that is often used as an argument against gun ownership right in the Bill of Rights, because the preamble to the phrasing states that in order to maintain a well-regulated militia, the right to own and bear arms will not be abridged, infringed upon. So, when you understand that they meant all male citizens of a certain age, and by today's standards, the exclusion of men only would never be accepted. No, that can't be. That pretty much means that all American citizens would be part of the militia that they were talking about. And I am still having trouble finding those 3 firearms in question. I had it here, just right here. So I apologize, folks. I'm going to continue to look for that while I do the multitask thing. Just a quick brief mention, just in case you hadn't heard. Ariel Castro, of course, was found dead. He was the individual who kidnapped the 3 girls and was discovered when one of them escaped. He was actually filing to get visitation, believe it or not, of one of the children. And, we're talking about a rape daddy. Unfortunately, in most states, there's no law to protect people from that. Not at all. It's kind of scary when you think about it. I've got to find that list, and I'm still looking on it. I need to move on to the next topic, but I am determined to go down this list because it's important to understand that these things are included by name, and then when you take a look at it, if you know anything at all about firearms, you quickly understand that this is a joke for a few reasons. And I think I'm getting close to finding it. Again, I apologize. Ordinarily, I have all this stuff out here, and it's not an issue. Somehow or another, though, got misplaced. Okay, here we go. Now, 3 of the weapons that are banned under the re-import of military surplus. One is the M1903, one is the M1 Garand, and the other one is the M1 Carbine. Now, for those of you who know anything at all about these weapons, you know that the Garand is a long weapon. It would be impossible to conceal in any fashion, and is a single shot bolt action. The M1903, also single shot bolt action. Probably the best weapon for actually doing any damage out of the 3. The M1 Carbine was heavily criticized for its lack of power. In fact, it's my understanding from having talked to a gunsmith who's worked on these weapons recently that, the talk was recent. He's worked on them extensively. So that with the M1 Carbine, once you get much past 20 yards, a button and leather clothing can be relatively effective protection from the weapon. So, what's the purpose of limiting these weapons? It's certainly not about safety. It's certainly not about protecting the American people. It is, however, about one thing. It is a stepping stone. If people accept this and then nobody calls them on it and they let it slide, then we're one step further down that slippery slope that is all-out gun control by executive fiat. Ladies and gentlemen, there are so many things that we're being distracted from. I mentioned some of them in the last broadcast here. So many things we're being distracted from. The fight to defund Obamacare. Who's still talking about it? You've got 1 or 2 congressmen that are still talking about it, and nobody's wanting to report on them having that discussion. Why? Because we've got to pay attention to Syria. We're going to go to war. We still have the upcoming debt ceiling negotiations, and they're hoping you'll be distracted from that as well. We have so many things going on. It is hard to imagine that nobody's talking about these items. It's way too easy to miss some stuff, but here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, I'm going to hit the last main story I want to get to today, and then, if time allows, we might just go ahead and discuss a little bit about Syria. I don't want to get into Syria too much about it because there's really too much for a 45-minute show anyway. With everything that's going on now, touched on it a little bit last broadcast. I could probably do a show dedicated to it every single day since this mess has started, and it still wouldn't be enough. And in the meanwhile, all these other topics are going uncovered. So, do me a favor, stay with us. We'll be right back. Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio. Yes, that's right. Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker. That is Spreaker.com. It's not really Spreaker Radio. Don't know why I said that when I was making the promotion. But you know what? This is just as much a radio broadcast as anything else is. So at some point I'll probably redo it. But anyway, right here at Spreaker, you can also find us, tapintothetruth.com. We have videos posting on the homepage, contact us button. We also have one page dedicated to previous blogs. We also have a friends and sponsors page set up so that you be sure to check out other folks that we're associated with, the Lady Patriots, TeaPartyCommunity.com, PatriotSpace.com, some alternative conservative social networking websites. If you're looking for something a bit more conservative, if you're on board with the Tea Party, then TeaPartyCommunity.com is the place you ought to really think about. But if you're just somebody who's just tired of the political status quo, you're not really a Tea Party person, but you're generally conservative when it comes to the issues of the country. You don't even have to be socially conservative necessarily, but PatriotSpace.com is a great newer conservative, generally speaking, social media site. It's still growing. It's picking up steam. So, check both of them out, see which one of them fits you better, and there's honestly no reason why you can't be a part of both of them. I am, and I enjoy it. Now, back to the issue at hand. Let's get to the most wonderful, awesome story that I've come across all of last week. Believe it or not, it is true. According to the ruling from a panel of federal judges, food stamp recipients can unionize. Now, supposedly this was a surprise ruling. Not sure why it was a surprise, but a 3-judge panel from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a unanimous opinion supporting the right of Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Programs, SNAP, that's food stamps, that supporting the right of these recipients to unionize in order to assure equitable and equal access to benefits, along with an uninterrupted flow of payments should the federal government be forced to temporarily shut down due to congressional budget stalemates. Translation: the court says you can unionize so you can fight those mean, nasty Republicans in case there's enough of them that grow cojones big enough to actually say, you know what, we're not funding Obamacare, and if you Dems want to close down the government as a result of it, that's on you. Oh, only they're not really going to tell you the last part. They're just going to say those mean Republicans. Anyway, I'll continue. Quote, for too long, so-called food stamps beneficiaries have been denied access to union representation, seeking to protect their rights. In a sharply worded rebuke to attorneys representing the National Taxpayers Union, which sought to block the ruling by the newly reconstituted National Labor Relations Board, one of the judges cited recent court precedents establishing the right of home health care workers, nannies, babysitters, and dog walkers to pay compulsory dues, which unions could then use to influence elections. Now, an important distinction there is, even though those may not necessarily be great jobs that people are just banging down the doors for, although, you know, home health care workers is an admirable job. Nannies, certainly not an easy job. Even just babysitters, I don't care. They're still jobs. J-O-B. They're working. Being a food stamp recipient is not a job. Anyway, I'll continue. Under the new rules, if a majority of SNAP recipients in any congressional district sign ballot cards accepting the representation of the federally recognized labor union, all SNAP beneficiaries in that district would have 30 days to voluntarily enroll or lose benefits. Monthly union dues would then be automatically deducted from recipients' electronic benefits transfer. That's the EBT card. Minus a small fee for the card processor, of course. Now, eyeing 47 million potential new members, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees immediately launched an organization drive, claiming that since food stamp recipients were on the government payroll and contributed just as much to the economy as other government employees, that I don't doubt a bit, their organization would offer the most appropriate representation. Did you get that? I mean, seriously? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The panel basically ruled, supposedly, because food stamp recipients have been denied access to union representation, that a government union, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, actually should be their union and started a membership drive. But it seems like the real ploy there is to bolster union dues. Of course, now the AFL-CIO president, Richard Trumpka, begged to differ with the opinion of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. He was quoted as saying, "We're it not for decades of untiring efforts by our brothers and sisters to drive domestic manufacturers out of the country, or if necessary out of business, there is no way we would have so many food stamp recipients today. It is only right that we be allowed to recruit these critical providers of aggregate demand to replenish our dwindling membership." So you get that? He essentially admitted that it was their own fault that there's so few jobs. Now, the EBT card processor, that happens to be J.P. Morgan Chase, in case any of you were wondering, said it could begin deducting union dues as early as October 1st, provided unions selected by cardholders cover a modest fee for software to enable funds to be deposited directly into designated politician campaign accounts. J.P. Morgan Chase stock rose $4 on the news. If even half of the nation's SNAP recipients elect to join a union, the $100 per month dues would total approximately $500 million a year, thanks to the Supreme Court's Citizens United ruling. That money will most likely be spent assuring fair and balanced elections, thereby ending gridlock in Washington. The subsequent increase in SNAP benefits that would occur once those goals were achieved would easily cover the monthly deductions. "What's not to like?" said Detroit resident and longtime food stamp recipient Maureen Pockets, who lost her job when the tool and die company she worked for moved to South Carolina after suffering a protracted strike. Quote, "I only make $4 an hour now, under the table with no benefits, working as a hired construction site picketer for the United Brotherhood of Carpenters. Without those EBT payments, I couldn't do my part." What? Seriously, I'm not making this up. They actually got Maureen to say this on the record. She's getting paid $4 an hour under the table. Hello, IRS, are you listening? Will you be targeting someone who's breaking the law? I mean, you don't have to go after Maureen. Isn't the United Brotherhood of Carpenters actually violating the law by paying these people under the table? She wouldn't be able to do her part without the EBT payments. Come on! Even the Reverend Al Sharpton declared a national day of Thanksgiving, organizing candlelight vigils to thank the court, as well as newly appointed members of the NLRB, who made this historic civil rights achievement possible. In related news, Grover Norquist doctors at Bethesda Naval Hospital report he is out of danger and recovering nicely after the heart attack he suffered upon learning the ruling. Yeah, that's a bit of humor there, but guess what? Sheesh. The occupier, stopping to speak to his media entourage from the 16th hole at the exclusive Farmneck Golf Club on Martha's Vineyard, chose to reflect on the long march towards income equality that this ruling represents. "I promised to spread the wealth around when I ran for president in 2008 and again in 2012 when you re-elected me to stay the course. I intend to keep that promise despite the protracted economic turmoil caused by fringe elements in the Republican Party who refuse to take a balanced approach to fiscal policy. Not to mention those millionaires and billionaires who just simply will not pay their fair share. Those greedy bastards. The president then called for a 9-iron to finish the job I started. At any rate, you've got to be kidding me. Did you hear this story? I am not making it up. This actually happened, and there's a reason why you're not hearing about it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's tonight's show. Remember, don't take my word for it. Definitely don't take their word for it. Use your brain.